Pull-ups and all of their different variations are a very useful category of exercises for most types of workout program. But needless to say, they can be quite challenging. In most cases, when starting a workout program, knocking out multiple sets of 10 to 12 pull-ups is simply a non-starter. So we're going to want a backup plan for how to tackle pull-ups when they come up in your workouts. Beginning a pull-up progression with a home gym can be especially daunting because more than likely you're going to be without a few tools that we often use to help with this process. A lat pull down, for example. And for our progression, we're going to omit one of the more popular ways of scaling pull-ups, and that's with a resistance band. I know that this method is popular, but I'm sorry to say that it's seldom the best choice. I won't get into the weeds too much here, but I'll just say that the inherent qualities of a resistance band, specifically the fact that the level of resistance varies as it stretches, give it some downside that's not readily apparent. The good news, however, is that even with a pretty basic setup, we still have access to the most powerful tool for building pull-up capacity there is, and that's the pull-up negative. A negative is essentially a pull-up in reverse. You don't pull yourself up, but instead you start with your chin above the bar and then lower yourself down very slowly. Once your arms are open at the bottom, you use some assistance to get back over the bar and then repeat. With negatives, the up part doesn't matter at all, only the way down. One thing that's important with negatives is that you find a way to begin with your chin over the bar without having to jump. If you have to jump, you're almost certainly going to swing around a bit, and that makes an already challenging exercise far more difficult than it needs to be. So you want to be sure to use a box or a step or something to stand on that allows you to start up plenty high and then simply step off of that support. One thing that works really well if you happen to be using a squat rack is to use a pair of hooks or safety arms as a sort of step system. That way, there's no jumping, no extra swinging, and you can just focus on the exercise itself. When you start using negatives, you're going to break from whatever rep scheme is written as a part of your workouts. Of course, when you open the app, it will still be written as just pull-ups when you look at your workout, but if you're doing negatives, you'll just have to remember that you need to adjust the rep scheme that's written. No matter what rep scheme your workout calls for, here's the approach that you are going to want to use. You start off by doing 4 to 6 repetitions at a 4-0-A-0 tempo. That's 4 full seconds on the way down with each repetition. You might remember from a previous discussion that A in the tempo stands for assisted, which is why we mentioned that the up phase here doesn't matter at all. Just step up on your box or whatever setup you're using to get back to the top. You shouldn't be working at all on the way up, just the way down. As you're getting started, slowly lowering for 4 seconds might be extremely challenging, and it's supposed to be. Then again, if you're a bit further along, then 4 seconds might not feel all that tough. I can't know exactly where you are, but the idea is that you will improve, and as you improve, you'll need to adjust the parameters of your negatives in the same way that we adjust the weights on a barbell. The way that we do this here is by adding additional seconds to slow that lowering phase. Once you have a firm handle on 4-0-A-0 tempo, then you can move to a 6-0-A-0 tempo. And after that, 8-0-A-0. After that, 10 seconds on the way down, and then 15 seconds on the way down. Basically, as soon as you can clear all of desired repetitions with your tempo, it's time to slow things down even more to make it even harder. Similarly, you want to reduce the number of repetitions with each set as you improve. So once you get to 8 seconds on the way down, you can stop at 5 repetitions. And once you get to 15, you can stop at 4 repetitions. I know that this is a lot to take in, and I want to stress that this is not going to show up in your workouts. Again, your workouts will just say pull-ups or chin-ups. They're not going to read negatives. That means you have to track your tempo and your results on your own, so I'd strongly recommend taking some extra notes so you always know just where you left off. Now, before we wrap this up, there's one last piece about negatives that's worth discussing. Negatives are a very powerful tool to improving your pull-ups. So powerful, in fact, that this exercise can really beat you up. It's not uncommon to be very, very sore the next day after negatives, particularly if this is your first time doing some training in a little while. There are often cases where in a full gym setup, that we might not choose to use negatives because it can be a pretty big bite when you're first starting off. But with our home gym setup, that's really all there is. That means that here, it's especially important to be a bit cautious on your first day of doing negatives. If they feel a bit easy on your first day, we can live with that. And then once you wake up the next day and discover that the soreness isn't too much more than usual, then you can start to get a little bit more aggressive in future sessions. So that's where we're going to leave things for now. Negatives are your go-to tool for progressing pull-ups. And I want to stress that even as useful as a technique as these are, it's not a magic bullet. Depending on how far along you are, you might be doing negatives for a good long while, and that's totally okay. Don't rush, don't feel frustrated. Just move slowly, really slowly, and celebrate the improvements as they come. And with that, we'll be back with step 2 of this progression a bit further down the road.